I'm sure you've all heard by now the shocking news. Victoria Alonso, executive from Marvel Studios, is gone. No more. The Gaffe machine is out of here. I was going to talk about it yesterday, but I really wanted to talk to my good friend Aaron Sparrow about this. Boom, Aaron Sparrow, how you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. What a great day. Oh, man, just good news just keeps coming in, doesn't it?
Victoria Alonso, the longtime and high-profile Marvel Studio executive whose time with the company dates back to the first Iron Man film, has left the studio for unclear reasons, according to The Hollywood Reporter. Alonso has been with the company since the earliest days of the MCU, establishing a 17-year run and watching the studio grow with the MCU, becoming the highest-grossing franchise in film history. And somehow along the way, Kevin Feige has always been the face of the MCU, but Victoria Alonso became like the other face of the MCU, despite really starting out as somebody that went out and scouted filming locations and stuff like that. Somehow she worked herself up to be an executive in charge of VFX and all that stuff, and she is gone.
Somehow at some point she started to get creative input, which seems to be the big downfall. I think that there's something called the Peter Principle, where people rise above where they're effective and they actually rise to a level of incompetence. And generally, they just kind of stay there. There's nowhere that they can be promoted to. There's nowhere that they can be shifted. And they just stay there and keep ruining things until eventually companies decide that they need to start making money. And that seems to be what happened here.
Are you saying she's the Jordan White of Marvel Studios?
I am saying she is the Jordan White of Marvel Studios. That is definitely what I'm saying. At least it appears that way. There's a lot of different stories that are coming out. There's stories about bullying. There's stories about, of course, we'll get into all that. But it seems like there was not a lot of reasons to keep her after the disasters of Phase 4 and the beginning of Phase 5, and more than one reason to let her go.
Well, it also feels like she's kind of the fall guy. She's taken it for the team on this one as somebody high profile that they're showing the door as they've been trying to cut costs across the board.
Yeah, I definitely think that there's some shielding of Kevin Feige going on. I think that largely Phase 4 and Phase 5, without guys like the Russo brothers, without guys like Joss Whedon, even though I personally don't like Joss Whedon very much, but without guys with vision, it seems like he's kind of been revealed as the emperor without any clothes. And so this was a good sacrificial lamb to kind of get out of the way. I definitely think that, she's a big part of the problem, but it definitely feels like, she was thrown under the bus.
Alonso's exit comes as Marvel Studios' most recent release, Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, collapsed at the box office. According to the numbers, the film has so far grossed only $205.8 million domestically and $256 million internationally for a global gross of $462 million. It also comes amid Walt Disney Company's CEO Bob Iger calling into question the quality of Marvel films and TV series and vowing to slash cost across the board. And there does seem to be some causality between the quality of Marvel's output when it comes to the MCU on screen as well as streaming and Victoria Alonso's ascension within the company into a more creative role.
Yeah, it's the Kathleen Kennedy syndrome. It's like, you had somebody who maybe, was good at making the donuts behind the scenes, was good at keeping certain things running, and then they're given a creative role, and it's just completely, outside of their wheelhouse. I don't think that anything that has been done with Star Wars under Kathleen Kennedy has been effective. She's proven to be a terrible creative steward of the franchise. And I think that, you were seeing the same thing with Victoria Alonso. There was a big push after the Me Too movement and, after everything that, everything that's been going on in kind of like pop culture and Hollywood. And they've been trying to do like a lot of diversity hiring and putting women in positions of power, putting, just moving people around and kind of like, sticking them where they're high profile roles, so they can pat themselves on the back and say, look how diverse they are. But, what they're not doing is it doesn't seem like they're picking these people based on talent. It's great to have female executives, but make sure that they are effective as their male counterparts. There's plenty of incompetent men in Hollywood that get fired and get, pushed to the side. So it's nice to see that, maybe things are kind of course correcting. Maybe nature is healing. We're kind of like pivoting back to profit. I still think Disney will be the last company to abandon, kind of the woke ideology that Hollywood has been pushing. I think they'll be last, but I think that we're starting to see things shift back to more towards the center.
Well, I have seen a lot of speculation like, oh, well, Disney must be kind of going away from what Victoria Alonso promoted. And one of the things that she was definitely a big proponent of was pushing diversity at all costs, period, within the MCU itself. But based on what I've heard, not only from Bob Iger, but from Kevin Feige, I don't actually see that going away with her exit. I think she's just somebody that was high profile, that cost a lot of money, that was absolutely going to get some headlines to show that they were making changes. but I don't think they're actually going to make changes.
No, I don't think they're going to make a lot of changes either. Like I said, I think that they'll be the very last to kind of pivot away. Unfortunately, Disney seems to be kind of locked on this course of representation and diversity above quality. It seems to be their first concern going in, and we've seen a lot of lip service from Kevin Feige talking about we want to have our messages in there, but we need to focus on quality first. I don't think he knows what it is anymore. I think that if he ever really did, I think maybe he had people under him who were coming in and saying, here's what we're going to do, and he was the guy that was just like, yes, that sounds awesome. But left to his own devices, so far, it doesn't seem like he really has a clear vision of how to reach the audience anymore. And most of the heroes that people are connected to are gone. We just saw these comments from Bob Iger where he's like, well, maybe, the problem is sequels and, maybe people don't want to see the same characters again and again. No, people want to see the same characters again and again. Fandom is very much about, I liked that last thing, give me another like it. They want to see those same characters again. They want to see Captain America. They want to see Robert Downey Jr.'s Iron Man. They want to see Thor. But they want to see them as heroes. They want to see them presented well and presented heroically and not turned into goofballs like Thor and Love and Thunder. They want to see things that are made to elevate those characters, not tear them down and make them garbage, so that you can introduce, some younger, cheaper actors that are based on characters that no one's ever connected to.
What's interesting about this is we know she has some creative input, but we're not sure exactly how much creative input Alonso actually has. But her exit is set to have a major effect on Marvel Studios' internal affairs, considering she is in charge of visual effects management for the studio. But in a past report, Marvel Studios were accused of blacklisting VFX artists, one Vancouver-based tech claiming the main one that everyone's quite scared of is Victoria Alonso. She is known in the industry as a kingmaker. If she likes you, you're going to get work and move up in the industry. If you have pissed her off in any way, you are going to get frozen out. So it does sound like there was some bullying involved with her and her position as the person in charge of VFX for Marvel Studios moving forward. But there is something else that people have commonly talked about in Phase 4 of the MCU, and it's that the VFX have sucked essentially across the board.
And isn't it funny that the people that are always, talking the most, paying the most lip service to inclusivity always seem to be the ones who can't wait to turn into tyrants and start blacklisting people and kicking people out? Isn't that a crazy thing that happens? I wonder why that is. It's almost like all of this is just window dressing for power.
Yeah, and I do think the performance of the VFX, and specifically because every movie has been talked about, it's like, why are the visual effects so bad right now? And then Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, the only thing anyone is talking about is just how ridiculously stupid Modoc looks. And I think that might have been another reason that she ended up having to fall on the sword.
Yeah, well, you've got an entire Phase 4 that's been a disaster. Nothing apparently has really made any money. Everything is underperformed. Things like Shang-Chi flop, Eternals flop, Ant-Man's turning out to be a big flop. And that was the launching pad that they were going to use for Phase 5. They kept telling you how important it was to Phase 5, and people are just checked out. People don't care about Phase 5. They don't care about these new heroes. They don't care about where the story's going. And, you've got a bunch of writers, too, that are coming in and just, ruining these franchises. Modoc was made goofy and stupid. And, people will be like, oh, Modoc's always been goofy because he's a big head and blah, blah, blah. No, Modoc is a body horror threat. And, do you remember that cover where it was the Serpent Society and they're tearing Modoc apart and it says, Modoc screams bloody murder? As a kid, I was like, what? That elevated the Serpent Society so much for me because Modoc, up until that point, was so horrific and kind of like this scary threat. Now he's just been made a joke by these hack writers, got these Rick and Morty people coming in where they don't take anything seriously. Everything's a joke. Everything's a gag. And there's no stakes. Who cares? Modoc shows up at the end of Quantumania with the line, my name is Darren and I am not a dick. That's his big heroic line and helps take down Kang. And it was just like, what is this? What are we doing?
Or she had to know if she was in charge of visual effects that people are going to not just roll their eyes at this. They're going to laugh at it because it's that ridiculously stupid. Not in a funny way, but just in a oh my goodness, I can't believe they put this on the screen. What has happened to the MCU way?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it's absolutely ridiculous. They've ruined so many characters now, especially in Phase 4. You ruined Taskmaster. That's a very interesting, very, kind of well-defined personality, and you just turned him into a mute. You Deadpooled him from, Wolverine Origins. You basically took a character that's got a really great banter and a really, defined kind of personality in the way that he presents himself, and just an amazing skill set who could have been a really great villain, and you could have spun off, into Thunderbolts and made him the leader of that team. and really done some interesting things, but instead you made it a mute woman. So, you ruined that. You ruined Modoc. You introduced the blank slates that are America Chavez and Ironheart, and no one cares. They're just plot devices. They're not interesting. Nobody's attached to them. None of these replacement heroes are going to work. No one's going to like Ironheart as much as Iron Man. No one is going to like Captain Carter as much as I love Haley Atwell. Beautiful woman, great actress, love her. But she's not going to replace Captain America. You're not going to replace Thor with Lady Thor. And you're not even going to try because Natalie Portman's not coming back,
She's dead.
Doesn't really want to do this, and good. I'm glad that she's not coming back because that movie was terrible. People, and for Bob Iger to come out and say, well, we're going back to the Avengers franchise with a whole new team of Avengers. That is why you fail. No one cares about Sam as Captain America. They just don't. They like him as Falcon. Steve Rogers is Captain America. You're never going to get away from that. You're never going to be able to change that. You can do in the new Avengers movie, and you can recast everybody, and you can have all new heroes, and no one's going to give a crap. It'll be as successful as the comic run where Dr. Druid was in charge of the team. No one gives a shit.
So what we shall see as far as the fallout of her exit from the MCU or in Marvel Studios, we're not really sure. But the visual effects, hopefully they'll get a tighter rein on it, and we'll have better visual effects. And really, Kevin Feige's life is going to get a lot easier. Maybe you'll have more work and have to pick up some of the stuff that she was doing. But she was such a gaffe machine. Every time she would go out there and try to make a statement or a point and try to be like a leader, she would just put them in a terrible situation by saying things that were absolutely stupid. The most notorious one in particular, her take on the X-Men name, where she said, "I don't know where the future is going. It's funny that people call it X-Men. There's a lot of female superheroes in that X-Men group, so I think it's outdated. I don't know where it's going to go." Like, I understand she's not American. English is probably a second language, but most people should know that the men in X-Men is not a gendered term. It's just like talking about mankind. And then she wanted to change the X-Men name, which is synonymous with the team and a lot of money being made within the box office as far as movies, and change out with like the mutants or X people. Like, that was just one of the dumbest takes I've ever heard.
Well, that's the problem, is when you have somebody in your company who's not commercially minded, but instead is activism minded. She's viewing it through this very narrow lens of, gender politics, whereas you should be viewing this through a business lens. What is the X-Men? The X-Men is a recognizable and celebrated and beloved brand. That name alone has cachet. To cast that aside because, current day, you think that it needs to be, X people or X pronouns or whatever it is that, you want to call it or you want to change it to, the mutants, Stan Lee was originally going to call, the book The Mutants. Yeah, he was. And then he stumbled upon a better name that sounded cooler. And that name has been built up over decades. So to try to abandon that because you want to go with some current day, weak gender ideology that, it needs to be more inclusive. It's already inclusive. It means everybody. It means mankind. And there's always been females on the team. It's like, get out of here. You obviously don't know the characters. We started off with just one with Jean Grey, but as the team progressed, it became, pretty much half female, sometimes dominated by women, led by, Storm during the, the 80s and the Claremont era. There's all kinds of strong female characters on there. It's not, and I don't mean strong female characters the way they're defined today, where they're just, ball busting men that, have women's skins on. I mean, actually well-developed female characters that were strong in their own right and that supplemented the team. And everything about that X-Men book was so great because you had, everybody had their strengths, everybody had their weaknesses, and they came together and like a chain, they compensated for each other's strengths. And, they buoyed each other's strengths and they shored up each other's weaknesses. And that's how storytelling should be done. But, she just wants to go in and she wants to girl boss it. And, these characters, they're half women, so we need to change it. No, you don't move away from the thing that brought you to the dance.
Speaking of that, the original mutant, the original Marvel hero Namor was introduced, obviously, in the Black Panther Wakanda Forever sequel film. And she was kind of out there front and center trying to sell this big, massive changes that they made to Namor. And it was just another gaffe. She couldn't even sell it. It's like, oh, well, he's the child without love now. And she went out there and tried to be the front man for Marvel Studios. And I think it kind of blew up in their faces. Very few people were actually excited for these changes. And then when you saw it on the big screen, you could see why. It just kind of fell flat.
Yeah, you know what's cooler than the Avenging Sun? the boy without love, or the boy who wasn't loved, or it's like, it sounds like you're doing a Harry Potter riff, the boy who lived. And this is the problem with putting idiots in charge of creative. They come in with their dumb ideas and they try to they try to reshape everything, and then they go out there and they try and push it. Like, she's out there because she's proud of it. She's proud of the fact that she made him Namor, and all of a sudden there's all this Mesoamerican culture attached to the Atlanteans, and they're not called the Atlanteans anymore, and they've got the stupid nose plugs and the big headdresses, and and it's just, it didn't work. And you cast a guy that looks tiny. He doesn't look intimidating. There was nothing about him in the acting or in the setup of the characters or the way that they kind of reframed the Atlanteans that worked. And I think that it was shown in the box office. And if you went and you tried to spin off a Namor movie right now, I don't think it would make any money. I don't think it would make any more money than Ant-Man did.
I think it'd make far less than that. But, at this point, I think she got promoted above her capability, was exposed to somebody that shouldn't be in charge of VFX. The VFX were bad across the board. Every time she tried to be out there and be a point man for the MCU, she basically caused controversy, and they just had to kind of clean up her messes and stuff like that. So she's gone now. Victoria Alonso is out of Marvel Studios. Do you have any final words there?
I think that this is a week where we saw Victoria Alonso get gone, and now we're hearing that the Damon Lindelof proposed Star Wars project is dead and that he's out. So it's a great time. It's a great time to be a fan. I'm now at the point where I'm like, just don't make anything. I'd rather you not make anything than make more trash.
Speaking of trash, we know the X-Men will be making their debut in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and we know that Victoria Alonso was pushing for a big name change from X-Men to the Mutants or X-People or something stupid like that. And we've certainly heard from some insiders to expect a lot of race swaps to go along with that. Now that Victoria Alonso is gone, will this not happen? I doubt it. I expect we will still see plenty of race swaps when the X-Men finally make it to the MCU. If you haven't seen this video, definitely need to check it out right now. There's also a link in the video description.